Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
The TRE Bookshow is sponsored by audible.co.uk. Download one title each month, plus unlimited listening to thousands of Audible originals, podcasts and audiobooks. Just click on the Audible banner at www.tre.radio.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good evening, welcome to tonight's book show. As always, we start by looking at the bestseller lists on amazon.co.uk and the Sunday Times, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. Just a couple of new entries this week. Then we'll be chatting to Kevin Christie, who left school at 16 to work in a builder's merchant. He gained a degree in journalism in 2006 and there followed a career with the Daily Record, The Scotsman and Scotland on Sunday. His debut novel, To Be Frank, is set in the streets of Portobello and Leith. It's a thriller that follows a journalist and his estranged daughter as they navigate a tangled web of addiction, parenthood and hidden pasts with devastating consequences. We're catching up with Paul A. Mendelson, who's a BAFTA-nominated screenwriter and author. His latest novel, Seville, is a bittersweet romantic comedy where past, present and future mingle, clash and resonate. It's based on Paul's honeymoon in Seville that poses the question, what if you met your younger selves on their honeymoon? The movie script has become a finalist in the world's largest romantic comedy contest in LA. We're chatting to Ali Walker, who's a noted television and film actress, screenwriter and director, who's been in films like While You Were Sleeping, Universal Soldier and Happy Texas. Her debut novel, The Light Runner, is the first installment in the Realities series and is an edge-of-your-seat metaphysical thriller that will mesmerize and haunt you from the first page to its shocking end. That's just the first hour. In the second hour, we're chatting to Rob Biddulph, Caroline Swinburne and Peter Hain.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good evening. Welcome to this week's book show. We start by looking at the Sunday Times bestseller list, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK and the one that every author wants to be on. This chart is the most accurate and comprehensive estimation of book sales in the country. Now, first week sales usually mark the commercial high point for a book, but thanks to constant media coverage about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as we now know him as, Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir Nobody's Girl has sold 20,000 more copies than it did last week. It's moved up a space to number 1 in the hardback general chart this week, ending Charlie McGrew's 3-week straight streak at the top with Always Remember. So let's look at general hardbacks. Just 2 new entries this week. At number 1, Nobody's Girl by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Number 2, Always Remember by Charlie McGrew. Number 3, A Mind of My Own by Kathy Burke. Number 4, Diddley Squat, The Farmer's Dog by Jeremy Clarkson. Number 5, When Gavin Met Stacey and Everything in Between by Ruth Jones and James Corden. Number 6, Last Rites by Ozzy Osbourne. Number 7, Entitled by Andrew Lowney. Number 8, a new entry called 8 by, funny it's at number 8, 8 by Paul Gascoigne, the England footballer, on the battles he has faced on and off the pitch. Number 9, This Way Up by Map Men. And number 10, the other new entry called A Complicated Woman by Rebecca Lucy Taylor, an exploration of womanhood from Genesis to the present day. Looking at fiction hardbacks, also just 2 new entries from last week, including that at number 1, The Rosefield by Philip Pullman. Lyra and Malcolm's quests converge. This is the final book in the Book of Dust trilogy. Number 2, The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. Number 3, The Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown. Number 4, The Hawk is Dead by Peter James. Number 5, The Long Shoe by Bob Mortimer. Number 6 is Alchemized by Sen-Lin Yu. Number 7, Sharp Storm by Bernard Cornwell. Number 8 is The Widow by John Grisham. Number 9, Gone Before Goodbye by Reese Witherspoon and Harlan Coben. And number 10 is the other new entry called The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. Beneath a magical yew tree, a female knight of legend forms a bond with a historian. Looking at amazon.co.uk, the top 10 bestsellers this week. Number 1 is Nobody's Girl by Virginia Giuffre. Number 2, the 2025 Driving Theory Test Kit, which includes the official highway code. Number 3, Always Remember, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse and the Storm by Charlie McGrew. Number 4, The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. Number 5 is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Number 6, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Party Pooper, that's book 20 by Jeff Kinney. Number 7, The Rose Field by Philip Pullman. Number 8, Mary 90 by Mary Berry. Number 9 is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And number 10, you're still colouring in, Cozy Corner, a calm and comforting colouring book for all ages by Coco Wyo.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
You're listening to the Book Club on Talk Radio Europe. And keep listening. That's an instruction from Margaret Thatcher.
Joining us on the line now is Kevin Christie, who left school at 16 to work in a builder's merchant. He spent the next 2 decades doing a variety of jobs in Edinburgh's financial institutions. He gained a degree in journalism from Napier University in 2006 and there followed a career with the Daily Record, the Scotsman and Scotland on Sunday. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his debut novel, To Be Frank. It's had 2 endorsements from Department Q actors. It's set in the streets of Portobello and Leith, and it's a thriller following a journalist and his estranged daughter as they navigate a tangled web of addiction, parenthood, and hidden pasts with devastating consequences. Welcome to the Book Show, Kevin.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you with us. And congratulations, your debut novel is out. Very exciting.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, uncharted waters for me, but I'm going along for the ride and enjoying most minutes of it.
Yeah, great. And how did it compare, writing a novel, to the journalism work that you've done?
You've got a bit more leeway. The journalism, it was deadlines every day. And with the novel, it took me a year to write the first draft. And you often get people saying, "Oh, how do you get time to write a novel?" And you're like, "Well, I'm starting from scratch. I'm making it up. Most of it's actually in my head, and I've got to take it from my head onto the page." So you would, you would have to police my thoughts if you thought I wasn't doing my job or something, like that. It's. I certainly enjoyed it. I found it very difficult, but I certainly enjoyed writing a bit, maybe a burst. And there was only maybe a couple of times where I drifted off and suddenly looked at the clock and perhaps 4 or 5 hours had gone by. That kind of sweet spot that writers can go into. But there was a lot of walking, a lot of drinking coffee and, getting into the heads of the characters.
Yeah.
Which are mainly based on people I grew up with,
Oh, really? I was going to ask you about Frank and if there's any of you in Frank.
Yeah, well, I've been asked this, and I always say, other than us being the same age, going to the same school, having gout, alcoholism, hypochondria, liking a double biscuit and a flat white, growing up in Portobello and Leith, and wearing Crocs to the pub, that's really where the similarities end, Hannah.
Sounds like a few, though.
Yeah, I would say there's bits of me and Frank. I'm not Frank, but there's a lot of me and Frank, and I've heard it said before that every debut writer has a bit of themselves in the characters.
Yeah. So what does Frank go through in the novel?
Well, he's very much a man who's outlived his era. He's a legacy journalist, which is print media. In the age of digital, where millennials walk the earth and rule the roost, he thinks he's going to get paid off, and he's kind of phoning in his column every week. He's running out of things to write about. So he writes about, he's in the cafe in Portobello And he can't get a minute's peace to have a coffee, to have his flat white and his double German Empire, Belgian biscuit, whatever they want to call him. And that's a sort of running theme throughout. There's 4 screaming babies. There's loads of dogs. And he decides he's going to write a column, tongue-in-cheek column, hungover, calling for the banning of dogs and babies in cafes because he thinks he's got nothing to lose. Turns out that this goes viral, and instead of getting the sack, he becomes a star writer, under pressure to write more and more bizarre, politically incorrect columns that actually comes quite easy to him, but becomes a figurehead for the politically incorrect. Now, this happens at the same time as his estranged daughter, Naomi, comes to Portobello. She's a venture capitalist, and there's a project to do up the old cinema, the old Regency cinema, with her firm. But it turns out, unbeknown to Frank, that she works for a organised crime group called the Syndicate, based in London, that are using the renovation of the cinema. You know, they're getting grants and government grants, various things. They're going to use it for money laundering. These are London gangsters, and their plan is to take over the drug trade in Edinburgh. You know, they think they're powerful enough to do that. And she, in the course of events, she ties up with Frank's nemesis, his old school friend, Brewster, who's a supposedly reformed racist football hooligan, who's now a pillar of the society in Portobello. You know, he's a sculptor, he's involved with the youth theatre, takes the women's football team, you know, very much a front. But he's a syndicate, he's one of the syndicate, he's their man in Edinburgh, and he ties up with Naomi, and she's not aware of her dad and Brewster's past. Now, they were at school together, and Frank blames Brewster for the death of his younger brother, Michael, back in 1988 at the old... Michael died at the old open-air pool, derelict open-air pool, which is the striking image on the front cover of the book, is the diving board. That was an old Art Deco open-air pool. I went there as a kid. It would be a Lido today, and it would be, I mean, people would go mad for it. It was such a fantastic building. It was amazing. So a lot of it's set, you know, that kind of goes back to that. Michael was persecuted. He was a gay guy growing up in Edinburgh in the 80s. And I touch on that, you know, that scene. There's a lot of memory triggers for old Portobello, a lot of nostalgic look back, and also talk about how things were in Edinburgh, kind of for the gay community in the 80s. So there's the nostalgia is very much Frank going back as a sort of mid-50s guy, looking at it through rose-tinted spectacles. Which we all kind of do when we look back at places and things from our childhood. And I certainly did there. I think I lived in 1988 for a year when I was writing this, 1988, 89. And, you know, you kind of get stuck in that period, yeah.
Yeah. It was obviously really enjoyable to write, both of the nostalgia point of view, but also, I guess, thinking about the kind of articles that that he was writing. That must have been fun.
Yeah, well, he writes, he's got the ban the dogs and the babies. The book's very much a comedy. They struggled to put it in a genre, so it got stuck in sort of crime thriller, but it's a caper, you know, it's a crime comedy. But the columns, I had free rein to go in and sort of have a laugh, and that was the best bit. That was the real fun. So I write about Frank calling for the belt to be banned, the belt. You know, corporal punishment. So he calls for it to come back. He wants that back. He wants Australians, New Zealand, South Africans banned from Edinburgh's Hogmanay. Says they don't bring any money to the economy. They all stay in the one flat in Stockbridge. I mean, he toys with the idea, writing a column calling for mascots to be banned from football matches, having watched a Man United Liverpool game and counted 26 mascots at the match, including the referee and the linesman, the lines people having mascots and the ball. So, you can see where it's going, you know, that sort of thing. But it also touches on very, very serious issues, you know. addiction, aging, doesn't shirk the racism. You know, the racism was quite hard to write, but I had to be true to that. You know, I couldn't fudge it. And the response has been brilliant, especially as you'd expect in sort of Edinburgh, reaching out to wider Scotland. And I'm looking, hopefully this interview will help, you know, just to broaden the horizons, because I think if folk it's an easy read, and I've heard that the feedback I've had is that it's a good laugh and an easy read, you know, and folks seem to be really responding to it.
Yeah, nice. And what about the response you had, having 2 endorsements from 2 of the guys from Department Q? That's really exciting. That was a great show.
Yeah, well, hands up, I've got to admit, you know, Jamie Sivis is my best mate, right? But I certainly made the best use of what was available to me. And Jamie's comment's actually a bit tongue-in-cheek. I think he says something like, "It begins here, the start of a glittering literary career."
Yeah.
But I think he was surprised. He loves the book, and I think he was a bit surprised. You know, he's like, "Oh, wait a minute, you know, we might look to do something with this." And Mark Bonner, I sat beside Mark Bonner in class at Leith Academy. First and second year, tormented him, but we were pals, and so I was joking at the launch, like, I like to keep in touch with Mark at least once every 40 years, and I'm close to his wife, Thingamy, and his 2 kids, and I pretended I didn't know their names and that, you know. But he's an absolute national treasure, especially in Scotland, and he didn't hesitate to do a wee turn for an old schoolmate, you know.
Oh, that's really nice. Really nice.
Yeah.
And, I mean, could this be made into a series, do you think?
A lot of people have said that to me. I would, that's the dream for most writers, isn't it? I can see it as that. And that was very much in my head when I was writing it. You know, I was like, there's this set piece. Although, yeah, it moves to the 4th rail bridge, and kind of 39 Steps inspired me for that. So some of the exteriors might be a bit difficult to film, but no, obviously I'd love to see it as that. And I'm in the process of writing the next one. No spoilers.
Really? What, a sequel?
Yeah, no spoilers. So it'll be a sequel, prequel in the style of Godfather 2. So the bits before, now, then the bits before, then the bits after. So far I've written chapter 1. That's all I've written so far. I haven't made it further than that.
Yeah. And have you found it, I mean, I know you've just started, but do you think the writing of the second book will be any easier or harder than the first?
I think it'll be easier, but I don't want to tempt fate here. I've created the characters, strong characters, most of them will still be there, and I've got recurring themes that can go through it. So I'm actually reading my own book, you know, physically reading it and just making notes, and I'm enjoying that. I can see where the second one goes, you know, kind of straying into farce and that, you know, things that I want to do. So I always had the producers, you know, the movie, the Mel Brooks thing, the producers, where it gets more popular the worse it gets, you know, like kind of thing. And that's how I felt about Frank's columns. You know, that's the second book, they'll be up and running with the cinema, you know, and there's endless possibilities as to, you know, if Frank was to get involved in the cinema, he's a Roger Moore man, you know, he prefers him to Sean Connery, and I think some of the films that he'd be showing would just be, I couldn't see it working. I've got it in my head that he has a run of Carry On films, you know, and Portobello's a really sort of gentrified, quite a cool place now. They would love it in real life. They would love an independent cinema, but I'm not so sure if like Frank's taste in movies would strike a chord with him. You know?
Yeah, it must be fun, like coming up with all these sort of weird and quirky and controversial, shall we say, for some of them, storylines through another character, because you can. I'm not saying they're your views at all, obviously, but you know, you're hiding behind a character. You can say, well, these aren't my point of view. This is Frank. It's not me.
They're not my views, but I'm a grumpy middle-aged guy, right? Grumpy middle-aged white guy. Not that matters. And there's a kernel of truth in some of the things he says. I'll go as far as that, right? Like the stuff about just wanting it. I mean, posh parents rub them up the wrong way and calling their kids Dashiell after Dashiell Hammett and all that. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of that kind of thing. These are just, there's things I know that annoy him.
Yeah.
And it's endless possibilities. You know, I've been reading a bit of A.A. Gill. Mm-hmm. I've been reading quite a bit of him, and I would love for Frank to stray into restaurant critique. That's where I see him. That's a potential career path, being a restaurant critic, because he's not going to
get it.
No, he's not going to get it. I mean, he likes bacon rolls, pies, and double biscuits, but just to shove him in there would be fantastic. Yeah. Especially, I've got this vision of a plate covered in foam. And Frank
that cost 50 quid.
There was that much foam that I managed to shave while I waited on the pudding. You know, that's a line in my head.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so I don't know where the second book's going quite yet, but I think it'll feature carry-on films and potential restaurant critique. And I'm thinking of going down to London for a bit, where Frank was in the 80s. Frank's Naomi's mixed race, and her mother is called Maxine, or deceased mother's Maxine, who was a black backing singer for bands in the 80s. So I had that in my head. And I've got somebody down there who is a DJ at the WAG, and the sort of soul to soul era, you know, a specific time when Frank would have been there writing for a magazine that's really the kind of like the face. And I want to maybe go and do a few chapters in that area, and it explains the story, it explains the syndicate, the wise one, what happened to Naomi's mum, and then bringing it back. I'm sounding very ambitious, like I haven't written none of this.
No, but it's great, and you can tell that you're really enjoying it, and a totally different sort of lease of life than the journalism, which, as you say, this has got a lot more freedom to it. You can come up with anything as ridiculous as it sounds and put it in.
And the journalism, I'm not saying it's had its day, but it was. I mean, I was starting to struggle with it. I was the health correspondent at the Scotsman during COVID.
Oh, gosh.
And you just get to the stage where you don't make any money.
Yeah.
Not that there's any money in books, but you're just like, this is just becoming a slog. But I love journalism, and obviously it's given me the idea for this guy, for Frank. And there seems to be a bit of a Frank family, you know, there's momentum building, you know, word of mouth is definitely building. And I've been blown away with the response.
That's great. Really good.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to get a copy of To Be Frank, it's available now on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Kevin Christie, who we've been chatting with. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you, Hannah. All the best. Thank you.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Paul A. Mendelson. He's a BAFTA-nominated screenwriter and author. He's created several much-loved BBC comedies, including May to December and the Martin Clunes cancer drama Losing It. He's also written 9 acclaimed novels, 3 of which have been optioned for movies. He's back with us on the Book Show to talk about his new novel, Seville. It's a bittersweet romantic comedy where past, present and future mingle, clash and resonate. It's a tale full of tension, poignancy, reflection, and of course, magic. It's based on Paul's honeymoon in Seville that posed the question, what if you met your younger selves on your honeymoon? The movie script has become a finalist in the world's largest romantic comedy contest in LA. Welcome to the Book Show, Paul.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's in fact, when the couple whose marriage is very fractured are given a present to go back to where they honeymooned. This is from their daughter, because she thinks maybe it'll help with their marriage, although neither of them think it will. And it's then that they meet their younger honeymooning selves in Seville during Semana Santa, where of course nothing changes, and neither goes backwards or forwards in time, but each, for some magical way, encounters the other, because the younger ones don't know who the older ones are. The older ones recognize the younger ones immediately.
So tell us about your experiences of going to Seville both times then, and how they were the same or different.
We went to Madrid and for our honeymoon, and some people there that we met, I think some Spanish people, said, you must go to Seville. It's Semana Santa, Holy Week. It's just absolutely marvelous. And it was Easter, so we thought, okay. So we got, and we didn't know we'd even get accommodation because it was so crowded. But some guy at the station handed us a little postcard with some little pension or whatever, and we went. And it was just magical and extraordinary, as you may well know, because I know you're in Spain. You've been yourself.
Yes, but, many times.
Yeah, which was just extraordinary. Then when it was our 25th, although in the book it's the 30th, it was our 25th wedding anniversary. My mother said, "Look, can I give you something? Can I give you a little trip, maybe?" And so I said to my wife, why do we go back to Seville exactly the same time? It'll be the same as it was, but we'll stay in a better hotel. Mm-hmm. And anyway, we did. And while we were there, I said to my wife, wouldn't it be weird if we met our younger honeymooning selves? And she just rolled her eyes. And I know when she rolls her eyes, I've got a winner, because each time I've given her an idea, she thought, "Oh, for God's sake, Paul!" And then fortunately something happens, like I get a series. So I thought, I'm onto something, and I wrote it as a radio play, and it did very well on BBC Radio 4. Yes, and it was repeated a lot of times. And then I thought, I'll write it as a movie script, and people will really like that. But then I thought, I can explore it further. So eventually I've written it as a book, and also as a script. And what I learned writing the script, I put into the book, and what I learned writing the book, I put into the script. And I tend to do these two things together because I'm basically, I'm also a screenwriter. And to my delight, it became a prize winner in a competition in LA for the romantic comedy. It's a bit more serious, actually, in parts than just a pure fluffy romantic comedy. It's got hopefully quite a lot of depth in it, because there are some tragedies that he tries to avert by trying to influence his younger selves, and then it's sort of be careful what you wish for. So basically, that's what the book is, and it came out. When it came out on October 28th, and advanced reviews that people have absolutely loved it, and found it very funny and very moving, because obviously I'm a comedy writer, so nothing I write doesn't have the comedic element, but I've tried to give it a bit more resonance and depth. I mean, my last comedy series was My Hero, with Ardal O'Hanlon playing Thermo Man, the superhero who lives in Northolts. So I can't pretend that had a huge amount of depth, but I think it was pretty funny. So I like to mix the genres a bit.
And how do you find it? You say it as if it's such an easy thing, writing a radio script, then turning it into a screenplay, turning it into a novel. They're all very different, aren't they?
Yeah, no, it's not easy, but things developed a lot from the radio, because the radio was only 45 minutes, so it had a lot more resonance and depth afterwards. But if you've got the characters in your head, then they sort of, to say they write themselves is ridiculous, because they don't. But you go on the journey with them, and somehow they take you in directions that you might not have expected. It's a strange process. My director of my very first series, May to December, the late Sidney Lotterby, who directed things like some others do have him, and Yes Minister and Porridge. He was just one of the giants, and he said some lines which I've said to young writers as the best advice I ever had, which is, don't get it right, get it written. And you splurge. In Hollywood they call it the vomit draft, which means the first draft you write just comes from somewhere inside you. and you get it down on paper, and then you do the crafting, then you make it work. But the first thing comes from somewhere that I don't think any writer can fully explain, because I think it's partly subconscious and whatever. But it's a lovely feeling when it's out there.
Yeah, I bet. I've never heard that before. The vomit draft.
The vomit
That's
draft.
Brilliant.
Isn't it good? Isn't it brilliant? and you talk to any writer, and they know that's what it is. You know, it suddenly comes out of you, and you think, where did that come from? It's like somebody else has written it, and you think, oh, I mean, when I was first writing comedy, I'd write something and I'd make myself roar with laughter, which sounds a bit pathetic. And then I stopped when I had to do it for a living. And because when I started doing it, I was in advertising, so I had a full-time job. So I could afford to take my time and make myself laugh. But when I suddenly thought, my God, this is how I support my family, suddenly the laughter stopped a bit, although hopefully not for the audience, but for me. And then it became a craft, in a way.
So tell us about the two couples in the story.
Okay, well, he's quite dour and Scottish, and I grew up in Scotland, so I sort of can relate to him. And his wife is Spanish, and he met when she was an au pair in Glasgow, and they met through a Scottish guy who was studying in Seville she's from Madrid, but she studied in Seville, and he studied with her, and then got her a job as an au pair and introduced her to his friend, who's our hero, and they fell in love and married, and you see the young couple in the book, and they're in love, although you can see that he's prickly, but you feel the love. And think he wants to be a writer, but that didn't happen, and he's sort of disillusioned. And I won't go into too many details because it'll give the plot away, but they had some personal tragedies in their own lives afterwards, and he wonders if maybe he can avert those somehow. But when he meets his younger self, and she's the Spanish lady, Luisa, is quite fiery and feisty, and he's a nice man, he's a sweet man, but he's been burdened by the years, and he's a marketing consultant, and he feels that he even organizes a meeting while they're in Seville this time. He thinks, so it won't be a complete waste of time, he'll meet the porcelain king of Seville, because everything in Seville is it was all tiles and porcelain. You can't move for tiles. So he thinks if you can get some sort of contract, then it'll make the trip worthwhile. But of course, she doesn't find that the most romantic thing on God's earth. But they confront. He first meets his younger self in the cathedral, where he just goes on his own, and he just can't believe it, and thinks he's going mad, basically. And it's sort of, hopefully, as you read it, becomes credible, although obviously it's magical realism and it's fantasy, but somehow, from what I gather from readers, it does sort of pull you in, and you accept the fantastical element, because the characters themselves are hopefully quite real.
Yeah. And do the older characters feel like they would want to meet the younger characters to give them any kind of advice or anything?
I think possibly give them advice, yes, but also he certainly does. He wants to change, but also there's a sadness, because they look at them and they're so in love and so hopeful, and this is reality hitting them 30 years on, of that lives do have their ups and downs, and he sort of wants to try and protect them from that, but how can you? It's what happens in a long marriage.
Yeah.
So it's about marriage, and it's about fate, and it's about acceptance, and it's also, hopefully, it's funny as well, really, because the humor doesn't stop. Although it's obviously poignant. The Independent said it was poignant, pacey, and suspenseful, which I thought was rather nice.
Yes, and nice that you've set it in Seville, because that obviously means so much to you, that city.
Oh, absolutely, and but also, Hannah, it's because the city doesn't change. So if they come 30 years on, there's still the old city and these amazing floats and the Catholic festivals. So you can accept that each of them, because nobody moves time zones. It's just that they can each see each other. It's like two time zones have clashed, and they can each see each other. But everything else around them they see is from their own era. So the older couple have to pretend that they're two different people. And also living in 1995. Otherwise, it would just freak the younger couple out. So they have to make up fictitious backstories, and that's where it can get a bit farcical. But hopefully, keeps the reality of it. I mean, he for example, when they meet each other and the younger couple ask what their names are, they can't say we're William and Louisa to. So he looks around and there's a waiter at the cafe where they meet and he's bringing a bottle of gin around. And so he says his name's Gordon, which is okay because it's a Scottish name. But then she doesn't know what to say, so she looks around and she calls herself Fanta.
Brilliant.
And I think the other couple just think, oh, well, that's right. It sounds sort of Spanish. But so it's, there's a certain madness in it, but hopefully it's fun. People who've read it say it brings Seville alive, because because I'm a screenwriter, I tend to think in pictures a lot, and I tend to think visually, and so hopefully that comes through in the book.
Oh, definitely. And it must have been nice for you. I mean, have you done anything like this before in a sort of semi-fantastical world?
Not for adults. For children, because I also write children's books, and the first children's book I wrote was called Losing Arthur, and it was about a little boy with a single mother growing up in Hackney, and his mother gets so fed up with him because he's got an imaginary friend that the mother posts his imaginary friend to Scotland. She just mails up, she puts nothing in a little box, and the boy is distraught, and he has to go and find his imaginary friend Arthur. And so, in a sense, you can do more things with obviously with kids stuff. And I've just written the third volume of a trilogy called Henry the Half-Time Hero. The second one came out in summer. The third one is next summer, which is about a little boy whose father's a superhero and his mother isn't. She's a school teacher. So he has superpowers, but he doesn't know when they're coming on and doesn't know when they go off. So he has to fly a little bit and then take the bus. And so that's obviously fantastical. And kids seem to have loved that. They find it, funny and exciting. So children, you can have a bit more leeway, but this is the first thing I've done, which is sort of fantastical for adults. And there are a lot of books where I think you can do that. You can, I think people's lives come up again. They have more than one life, or they meet the past selves, whatever. So I think people sort of accept it now. It's sort of I think they call it magical realism, don't they?
Yes, nice. Well, if people want to get a copy of Seville, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Paul A. Mendelson, who we've been chatting with today. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very, very welcome. It's nice to speak to you again, Hannah.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now, Walker. She's a noted television and film actress, screenwriter and director who made her television debut in the NBC daytime soap opera Santa Barbara before landing films such as While You Were Sleeping, Universal Soldier and Happy Texas. She's with us on the book show to talk about her debut novel. It's called The Light Runner. It's the first installment in the Realities series. It's an edge-of-your-seat metaphysical thriller that will mesmerize and haunt haunt you from the first page to its shocking end. Welcome to the book show, Ali.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's great to have you with us. And how did it feel doing something so different like writing a novel?
Well, at first it felt a little nutty, but, I had written screenplays a lot before, and I had done a couple movies, and I'd been a script doctor, so I knew how to do that. I knew how to do screenplays, but writing a novel was really a lesson. It took me a while, but I really enjoyed the freedom of it, where you get to write down all the thoughts and everything about the character, and then go back and kind of make it perfect. It was really a labor of love, shall we say, but it was really fun.
And the fact that this is the first in a series, did you plan that before you started writing, or did you think as you were writing, there could be more with this?
Well, the thing is I wrote this as a television series, and I wrote it as a limited series, and then I thought, well, I could do a second and a third season of this. So when I was conceiving of it, I really did see it as maybe 3 years of shows sort of depicting the different ways in which we view reality and interact with reality. And so I kind of always thought it would be a series. I just didn't know it would be in book form.
Yeah, interesting. And was it very, very different, even though you're used to writing with the screenplays? Was it a very different discipline, writing a novel?
Yes, it really was. In screenplays, it's very sparse, and you tend to set up the scene and keep things very limited. You know that the actor and the director and, everyone's going to have sort of their spin on the scene and bring different things to it. And so you tend to keep it very light and sparse. Whereas a novel, you describe every moment, every blink of an eye, every breath, I think anyway, the ones I've read that I like. So it was an education, it really was.
Yeah, but you obviously enjoyed it because you're writing more.
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed the process of, I've been acting for 30 some odd years, and I got to play every part and think every thought that they thought. And so I got to inhabit all these really different characters, and it was really, really fun for me. Really fun.
And with the acting side of things, how did you get into that?
How did I get into acting? Crazily enough, I was studying science. I got my degree in biology and, biochemistry. And I was at a restaurant with a friend of mine on a visit to Los Angeles, and I was seen in a restaurant and asked if I wanted to audition for a film. And I thought the guy was crazy, one of those weirdos. But my friend was actually in the business. He said, no, that's actually a legitimate film. You should go to that audition. So he went with me, and I got the little tiny part, which I think ended up on the cutting room floor, basically, of this little independent film. But I sort of got the bug, and then I started... I don't know how I got seen. I got very lucky. I got people inviting me into the industry. It was a very different industry back then. It was very different. I was invited into it, but then I slept on, people's couches and waited tables for years until I slowly but surely got my jobs one by one and built my resume, which is, always difficult, but it was kind of this sort of fantastical way of getting into the industry. It was kind of magical. Like, what's her name? Lana Turner, I believe, was sitting at Schwab's counter and got spotted. So it was really fun, really different. But,
yeah.
Glad I did it.
And any kind of highlights to share with us in some of the films and things that you were in?
There's several. I've enjoyed everything. I had done acting in high school and college, but I'd never thought I'd make a living at it. So for me to make the kind of living I was able to make was pretty phenomenal. I think I got to meet a lot of really interesting people. I really liked working with Cameron Crowe. He was really smart and funny. And I've met a lot of really cool people. Katie Seagal's a good friend. I just have a lot of different people that I've come across. And for me, it's at the end of the day, you forget the jobs and everything, but you make friends and you try to stay in touch with people, and, you get to work on things that you really enjoy together. So the whole process for me was really wonderful. I was, hoping to go to med school, and, and I was working in a laboratory by myself a lot. And it was just great to be around people in a creative endeavor. So I really enjoyed my career. Yeah.
That's nice. Because you'd assume that it could be really competitive, you know, bumping into friends at the same audition and things like that.
Well, it is. It's very competitive. I mean, I tell young actors now, if you don't love it, you really shouldn't do it, because it's kind of brutal. You know, I lost a lot of jobs to my friends or people I knew. It bummed me out, but we all kind of, you know, just rolled with it, and we're like, oh, you got that one, and it was fine. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, but it is very. You have to deal with a lot of rejection. And you have to have sort of this fortitude, I think, that many jobs don't require, because it's sort of, you know, looking at you and rejecting you. So it's a bit difficult at times.
Yeah.
But, you know, I loved the craft. I loved working. I stayed in class even while I was working, and just really enjoyed it, you know.
You're talking in past tense. Is it something you've definitely left behind now then, the acting?
Pretty much. I would go back if I found a role or got invited to do something or really wanted to audition for something, but I just haven't really found anything. You know, did it for 35 years, I guess, and I was very lucky and very much enjoyed the work I got. And I think, you know, I never had to play. I got the kooky kind of smart girl roles that were fun and interesting to me, and I think doing that as an older woman would be really great. And I think the Brits do it. I'm not so sure. I mean, there's some roles that I'm like, you know, that like, you know, Jean Smart or somebody, you know, that I'd be like, I'd love to do that. Mm-hmm. But I don't see too many of those really. And I don't know. I'm happy for others. And if it comes to pass, great. And if it doesn't, I'm okay.
Yeah, well, that's a nice place to be, I guess.
It is.
So let's talk a bit more about The Light Runner. Tell us about your main characters.
So the book centers around a young woman who's a young psychiatrist who's just out of her residency working at a psychiatric hospital, Bainbridge Psychiatric, and a war hero whose wife has been murdered in a parking lot at her biomedical pharmaceutical workplace. And as he checks himself in because he's so distraught. He checks himself into the psychiatric hospital, and Ella becomes his doctor. And as she begins to work with him and listen to him, there's something about him that she just doesn't quite get. And then it's a thriller. You know, you start to get information in different forms from the other patients in the hospital, and Ella thinks she's going mad herself as her own history begins to unravel, and she starts to believe what the other patients are saying about reality. And she sort of figures out who kills Mad's wife, and you just have to read it. It's kind of a mind-bending thriller, all of the Da Vinci Code or something, and it's I think it's a fun read. I hope readers will think so too.
Yeah, I'm sure. And why is it called the Realities series?
Because it deals with reality. I mean, it's sort of metaphysical, I guess. I think the way we look at things, the way we envision ourselves, and how we create our own reality. You know, my father was he was a physicist. So I studied, you know, quantum mechanics and things in school. I don't remember any of it now, but I've always thought that there were alternate realities, and that, you know, it always comes down to the choices you make, but there's several different versions of what you're doing that could take place. And so it kind of plays with that and plays with time, the concept of time, which isn't real. And, you know, I just have fun with it. So I play with, you know, I make up different theories, basically, for my story, and use quantum mechanics and various spiritualities and astrologies to do it. But it's all to lend to the hunt for this murderer. Yeah, I don't know. I hope people enjoy it. I really loved writing it.
Yeah. And will we follow the same characters throughout each book, or is each book a different kind of story?
No, each book is a different world. You will follow one character, maybe two, from the current book into the second book. but some time, even though it's not real, has passed, and the character's grown up. So you'll have to wait and see. I hope you read it, Hannah.
Yeah, exciting. Well, it's called The Light Runner, and if listeners want to get a copy, it's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Ali Walker, who we've been chatting with today. Ali, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good evening. Welcome to the second part of tonight's book show. In the first hour, we were chatting with Kevin Christie, Paul A. Mendelson and Ali Walker. In this hour, we're joined by Rob Biddulph. He's an award-winning author and illustrator who previously worked on magazines like Just 17, NME and The Observer magazine. His first picture book, Blown Away, published in 2014, was only the second picture book to win the Waterstones Children's Book Prize. Rob was an official World Book Day author in 2024 with his first ever Draw with Rob picture book, Charlie McGrew and the Horse That He Drew. His latest inspiring picture book, When I Grow Up, I'd Like to Be, is an exploration of jobs and the world of work and is full of hope and childhood ambition. We're also chatting to Caroline Swinburne, who's a piano teacher and qualified music therapist. Originally a French horn player, she became obsessed with the piano and now runs a successful teaching practice as well as writing music-themed fiction. Solo follows a former French horn player learning to face her past when a disastrous solo humiliated her on the world stage. And we're chatting to Peter Hain, a politician who as a teenager was exiled to the UK from South Africa, becoming a leading activist in the anti-apartheid movement. Elected MP for Neath in 1991, he stood down in 2015 to join the House of Lords. He's written 3 environmental thrillers, with Fallout being his first standalone thriller set in the 1980s. He weaves historical facts amongst the fiction, including his own experience of an undetonated letter bomb arriving at his family home in the 1970s. And that is tonight's book show on Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Rob Biddulph. He's an award-winning author and illustrator. Before life as a published author and illustrator, he worked on magazines, including Just 17, NME and The Observer magazine. His first picture book, Blown Away, published in 2014, was only the second picture book to win the Waterstones Children's Book Prize. Since then, Rob has illustrated 15 of his own picture books and created a range of best-selling activity books. He was also an official World Book Day author last year with his first ever Draw with Rob picture book, Charlie McGrew and the Horse That He Drew. Rob's series of #Draw with Rob videos designed to help parents with children at home from school due to pandemic became a viral hit when he launched in March 2020. The videos have been watched almost 6 million times on YouTube alone. Rob also holds the Guinness World Record for the biggest art lesson when over 40,000 families joined him online to draw a whale in May 2020. He's with us on the book show to talk about his next picture book, When I Grow Up, I'd Like to Be. It celebrates the importance of dreams, the joy of curiosity, and all the excitement that the big wide world has to offer. Welcome to the book show, Rob.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to have you with us on the show. And gosh, I bet it feels like an age away when Blown Away came out, over 10 years ago now.
It's over 10 years ago. It does feel like quite a long time ago, actually, and a lot has happened in my life since then. But you know what? The thing about picture books, I guess, is that they don't really go away. You know, children, parents buy them for siblings, and so they sort of keep coming up. And all of my live events, I'm still signing loads and loads of copies of Blown Away. So it's a nice thing to kind of have around there at all times, really.
Yeah. And for your first book to do so well as well was pretty amazing. Did you really feel like you were on the right path?
Well, I did eventually. I mean, it took me a long time to get published. So, I'd had a successful magazine job for like 20 odd years. And, I decided I wanted to have a go at writing picture books when my children were little, and I was reading bedtime stories, to them. And I thought, I think this is something that I can do. But then it took me about 5 years to get published. But then when I finally did get that book published, Blown Away, it won the Waterstones Prize, which is amazing because what it means is your book is in the window of every single Waterstones shop in the UK for a month. So it gets you off to this kind of flying start. And after that, I was kind of a known quantity in that world, I guess. And as I said earlier, parents tend to, if they find an author that they like, they tend to stick with them and buy their next book. So I was very, very lucky to win that award because it really did get my career off to a flying start.
Yeah, amazing. And tell us about last year being official World Book Day author. That must have been amazing as well.
Yeah, it was really nice. Well, actually, before that, I was the official World Book Day illustrator for 3 years in a row. So back in 2019 to 2021, I did that. So I knew the World Book Day team really well from doing all the events and all the tours and that kind of thing in my capacity as illustrator. So then to actually get one of my own books as one of the official books is an amazing thing, because the great thing about World Book Day is that they give a book to every single child in the UK. They give them a token. They can exchange it for any one of the official World Book Day books. And very often that is the first book that a child has owned in their life. Particularly it's heartbreaking. Actually, I tour all over the world doing events at the big literary festivals, Hay Festival, Edinburgh, that kind of thing. And, you always ask the children, how many of you have a bedtime story? And at the festivals, every hand in the room goes up. But sometimes you will visit a school in a slightly more deprived area and no hands go up. They just don't seem to have books at home. Parents don't read don't realize the importance of reading. And so these kids, the money isn't spent on books. So when you get to go out with World Book Day and give a book to a child who's never owned a book before, it really is a magical experience. And you really hope you're kind of opening a doorway for them into this kind of world of reading that we all love.
Oh, definitely. Isn't that sad? The idea that they have probably played computer games, but not read a book.
Yeah. Exactly. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And tell us about these Draw with Rob videos. They sound fantastic.
Yeah, well, it started back in March 2020. I was sitting on the sofa with my wife on a Sunday evening, and they announced on the news that they were going to close all the schools. And so I thought to myself, oh my goodness, there's going to be lots of children stuck at home looking for things to do. To be honest, I thought there's going to be lots of parents looking for things for their children to do. And so I thought, well, I think I can help here. All of my live events, I do a draw-along. I show the kids how to draw one of my characters when I'm on stage. So I'll just video myself doing that a couple of times a week and stick it up on YouTube and see what happens. So that was the Sunday night. On the Monday, I recorded the first video. On the Tuesday, I put it up on my YouTube channel. On the Wednesday, so many thousands of people all around the world had watched this video that I was on News at 10 in the UK that night. And that's how quickly it happened. I literally overnight started to get sent, probably tens of thousands of pictures of children holding up their drawings of dinosaurs really proudly. And and it was a lovely thing. And I still do the videos to this day. I don't do them quite as often, but I get sent pictures every single day of my life, and lots of schools use them for like golden time activities. I think maybe when the teacher wants to have a cup of coffee, they stick me on the screen and the kids draw along with me. But it's a really, really lovely thing, not least because wherever I go, people tell me that they can't draw. They're rubbish at drawing. And so I say, well, you know what? Everybody can draw. There's no right or wrong answer with drawing. Who's to say what's good and what's bad? It's all about opinion, right? So all I try and do is give children and lots of grown-ups draw with me as well. So I try and give them the confidence just to, express themselves on a piece of paper. And I think probably it's the thing that I'm most proud of in my career, actually, because the reaction I get from kids is astonishing.
Yeah, I understand that. If you're getting sent pictures every single day, that must be so rewarding.
Oh, it's so lovely. And, when I do my live events, they come along to the book signing afterwards. They bring their folders full of all some of them have done every single video, watched every single video. There's, 250 of these things. So they've got these huge folders full of their drawings. Wow. And they're writing stories for the characters and that kind of thing. So again, I just think it's a kind of a starting point for lots of these kids to kind of have an adventure in the creative world, So, I'm super proud of it.
Oh, nice. And particularly, I guess when people say, I can't draw. And then the next minute they're drawing going, maybe I'm all right.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I get drawings, you get sort of 2 and 3-year-olds who because what I do, I break the drawing down into little bite-sized pieces. So we just draw, a little shape or a line, and then they will copy what I do. And then, we go back and forth like that. And of course, by the time they've put that jigsaw together, they've ended up with something that looks really good. And, you get, tiny little kids who draw these really amazing pictures of whatever it is, penguins or sausage dogs, and they can't believe it. And similarly, adults can do it as well. And I think it's just that thing of when you first look at something, you just think that's not something that I can do. It's too complicated. But as soon as you break it down into the kind of the elements, it's definitely something that's attainable. So I'm just really trying to give people the confidence to draw by themselves.
Yeah, great. And with your picture books, what kind of comes first to you? Do you have an idea or even a rough sketch of the characters, or do you write the story first and then illustrate it? How does the process work?
Well, usually, it starts with the idea, obviously. So, the idea might just be a one-sentence idea. Often it is, things that happen in my real life, or, something that occurs to me while I'm, driving the kids to school or something. I'll pull the car over and I'll make a note in my phone, and I call that the sort of kind of the seed of the story. So, often it's just a few words, penguin flies a kite, or I don't know, sausage dog doesn't fit in with the other sausage dogs. That's how a story idea starts. And then you slowly start to kind of grow that idea in your head. And then what I do, as you say, I sketch the lead characters from the story early on. So, because I always find it easier to write if I've got a picture of who I'm writing for in my head. And then I will write the entire story almost as my books, they all rhyme. So I kind of write it as a poem. And then it's a question of kind of splitting it up into the pages and making sure the pacing's right and you've got your highs and your lows in the right places. I write it as a poem, get that all sorted, and then I'll spend a month or 2 drawing it, which is the nice bit. I don't really have to think about the drawing. The writing part is quite hard. It takes 5 minutes to read one of my picture books, but it sometimes takes 6 months to write it, to get the rhyme absolutely perfect and the meter perfect. And so that's hard, but the drawing comes fairly easily to me, so I can sit there and listen to music or listen to radio shows like yours while I'm drawing. So it's a nice process because you're using 2 different sides of your brains for each part of the job. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And do you have a fresh set of characters in each story, or do you have recurring characters that you're drawing and talking about?
Usually it's a brand new story each time in my picture books, at least. There's been a couple of instances where a book that's been particularly unpopular, I have written a second installment of their story. But usually I try and do a brand new story each time. I just kind of, I change my illustration style as well slightly because, I think we've always, as creative people, we've always got to be moving forward and kind of growing and developing in ourselves. And I think that if I look back on my first book, Blown Away, I kind of think, well, I wouldn't do it like that now, but I'm glad I did it like that back then. It's like a little snapshot of time. But I also write slightly older books. I write chapter books, middle grade books, we call them. And they tend to be more more series, really. So I've written a series book called the Peanut Jones books. And so that's a very different thing to do. Writing 40 or 50,000 words in a chapter book is a very different thing to writing a picture book. And I sort of tend to think that lends itself better to kind of having recurring characters and series. Yeah. But again, it's another different discipline. So it's, variety is the spice of life and all that.
And when you're writing books for particular ages, you obviously need to be aware of the language that you're using, that the words aren't too complicated. If it's for younger children, is that quite difficult to do? Do you really need to understand the language that you can use for the various age groups?
I think you do. I think to me, it sort of comes naturally. I mean, I've got 3 daughters. And I always say, if I didn't have children, I think I'd find it very hard to write for children because, I'm used to talking. I know how to talk to children, I think.
Yeah.
The key thing is that you shouldn't talk down to children. So, I don't want to write my books in that kind of little babyish voice, kind of patronizing, talks down to children. But at the same time, you're right. You have to use an appropriate vocabulary. But I kind of think, having had years of birthday parties at our house, a house full of 30 screaming children, you sort of do get to know how to talk to children. I think one of the keys, especially in my writing, is to know how to make them laugh and sort of take the mickey out of them a little bit. And I think they really, really respond well to that. So I like to have a little bit of cheekiness in my writing. But yeah, I do feel very lucky in that it comes fairly naturally to me. And I do put that down to, even when I'm writing the older books, we've read bedtime stories to my girls, all the way through up until they were in their teens. I read to them. So you get to know how to talk to them and what they respond to and what they don't. So hats off to authors, children's authors especially, that don't have children, because I don't know if I could have done that without having the experience of being a parent. But it certainly served me very well.
Yeah. So let's talk about this new book, When I Grow Up, I'd Like to Be. Tell us about the characters and what happens in the book.
Okay, well, it's a slight departure for me, this book, in that it's not so much of a narrative story, really. It's more of a kind of a meditation on, what kids want to be when they grow up. Every single, I spoke earlier, I could go all over the world doing my live stage show event. And every single one I do, I start by asking the children in the audience what they would like to be when they grow up. And you get some brilliant answers. It's hilarious. I got, the other day I had a little girl who insisted she wanted to be a dog when she grew up, a puppy. I think a Springer Spaniel she wanted to be, so, which might be quite hard for her to achieve. Yes. But, you get the usual things. You get astronauts and vets and lots of teachers and, paleontologists and things. But they are so keen to tell me what they want to be when they grow up. And I really love that. That's sort of that, it's that hope, the hopes and dreams of the kids. It's just there's something so uncynical about my audience. I really, really loved it. The enthusiasm with which they embrace their futures. And I guess this book, When I Grow Up, I'd Like to Be, grew out of that enthusiasm, really. And there's one book I've always loved, which is the Dr. Seuss classic, which is called Oh, the Places You Go. And lots of people have that read at their wedding as part of their wedding vows, because it is a children's book, but it has much kind of broader implications on life for anybody, really. And so I kind of wanted my book to be in that vein. It could be a book that speaks directly to children, but actually I think, all of us still want to be something when we grow up, right? No matter how old we are. And so I just wanted my book to celebrate that sort of magical mix of hope and wonder, and dreaming big, because, but at the same time, I think it was important for me to show that the journey is just as important, if not more important, than the destination. So the ending of the book is all about, the most important thing to be when we grow up is happy, so I wanted to kind of get all that in there as well. But, I guess the book is a tribute to curiosity and to imagination and, all the excitement that, the big wide world has to offer, really. So, it was a really fun one to write and to illustrate as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you're young, when you're a little kid, anything is possible. And it's really important to install that into kids, whatever they want to do with their lives, whether it's to do with sport or science or technology, as long as they get the right qualifications and they put the work in, they can do whatever Absolutely. They like. It's when we get older that these opportunities become fewer and fewer as we age. The dreams of dancing on a West End stage, once you get to a certain age, you start to think, I don't think I'm going to be doing this now.
I mean, I still harbour dreams of playing for Arsenal one day, playing football for us. But maybe that might have gone. I don't know. But I think there's something that happens, isn't there? When you grow up, you sort of start to put barriers in the way of the things that you really dreamt of doing when you were a child. And I think when you're a child, you, as I said, you don't have that cynicism, so you're open to everything. And I do say to kids at my live events, as long as you're prepared to really put 100% into whatever you want to do and put all the effort in and work, then you're going to have every chance of achieving your dream. So, I think it's important that children children think like that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's the best age to sort of set yourself up for life. The reality that the world is your oyster. You can put yourself on the right path to do whatever you want to do.
Exactly that, yeah.
Well, if people want to get a copy of When I Grow Up, I'd Like to Be, it's available now on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Rob Biddulph that we've been chatting with. Rob, one question. Can you remember what you wanted to be when you were young?
Yeah, well, there's two things. I wanted to be, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be a footballer. My uncle was actually a professional footballer. He played for, big Premier League teams, and I wanted to be like him. But the thing I really, really wanted to be is an illustrator. I was always the kid at school who drew. I was known as the kid who drew the pictures. And I think my mum's an artist. So again, I think the whole way through my life, that is what I wanted to do. It's just a question of kind of picking a path through life that would enable you to do that. And so for me, doing this job that I do now, writing and illustrating books for children, it's a total dream come true. So I feel very, very lucky to be doing it.
Yeah, nice one. Well, Rob, it's been lovely chatting with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Hello, little Alan Bennett here. If I'm not writing books, then the thing I like most is listening to the book club on Talk Radio Europe. Fancy.
Joining us on the line now is Caroline Swinburne. She's a piano teacher and qualified music therapist who previously worked for the BBC. Originally a French horn player, she became obsessed with the piano and now runs a successful teaching practice in southeast London, as well as writing music-themed fiction. She's with us on the book show to talk about her novel Solo, which follows a former star musician traumatized by failure. She returns home and mentors a gifted teen horn player. As her protege rises, she faces her past, seeking redemption through the music that once broke her. Welcome to the book show, Caroline.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's great to have you with us. And it must have been interesting and fun writing about a subject that you obviously know so well.
Yeah, the horn is very dear to my heart. It was my first instrument. I started, when I must have been about 9 at my primary school, and a music teacher found this old instrument in the cupboard and for some reason suggested I try it. And I imagine it sounded pretty awful to start with, but I fell in love with the idea of this beautiful golden instrument. And yeah, it's played a major part in my life. But it's not the safest of instruments. In fact, it has a reputation for being probably the most dangerous of instruments, in that things can go wrong however well prepared you are. And I had my moments. Everybody's had their moments. And I started to think, what would happen if, I never played at a top professional level, but what if the worst happened? Which is possible. I mean, disasters are rare at that sort of level, but possible. What would be the effect on this woman? And would she ever be asked to play again? If she was asked to play again, would she be able to? Because obviously it would have a huge effect on her mental health. And if not, what else was she going to do? Because to get to that level in classical music, music is your life. You practice all hours, you rehearse, you sacrifice social life, everything else. How would she fare in the real world? And then what would it take to get her back, if anything? That's how my character was born, and that was how it all began, really.
So what's so dangerous about it? What can go so wrong?
Oh my goodness me. Okay, well, so the horn, you need, there's something called the embouchure, which is the way that you play it with your mouth on the instrument and on the mouthpiece and the shape that makes. And it's a brass instrument, the French horn. The horn players don't like being called brass players, but they are. But it's got a much smaller mouthpiece than any other brass instrument. That means that the whole thing is more precarious. And although you have to pitch the notes with your mouth, I mean, you can have a little guidance with the vowels, but basically you have to pitch with your mouth. And that can go wrong. So that's probably the first thing. And the second thing is that the stamina issue is it's all done with the strength of the muscles in your face. And it's like, if you're out of practice and really haven't, practiced to a high level, it's like, or the analogy I use is, it's like trying to run a marathon when you've been, lounging on the sofa for the last 3 weeks. So that's another thing that can go wrong. And in an orchestra, you would normally have 4 horn players, sometimes more, but you each have an individual line, and the first horn and sometimes the third horn have the more exposed parts, so that you are normally the only person. I mean, in fact, a theme that comes out in my book is there is also sometimes a backup player, but even so, when it's a big moment, there will only be one person playing it. So if it goes wrong, everybody will hear.
Gosh, so a lot of pressure then.
No, absolutely, yes.
So have you not played in a while, or do you still play fairly regularly?
Okay, I've given up the horn, I say, more times than I've had hot dinners. So my history is that I played very keenly as a child and teenager and into my 20s. But then I went to work for the BBC, aiming to work in music broadcasting, which I did briefly. But I got a bit sidetracked by making speech radio features, I'll put it like that. And which was great. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, but the music, and I also played the piano, which all of my music took quite a sideline for quite a long time. I then had children, so I was very busy with work and with young children. So I didn't play for a long time. But then in my 40s, it actually started again because so I have 2 sons, and my older son, I was doing no music at all at the time, but it doesn't normally go this way around, started showing a great interest in music. And, started with the recorder at school, and then he wanted to learn the violin, and then he actually took up the harp. But he used to say to me, he would say, "Oh, you used to do this, and can you help me? And you could accompany me." And anyway, I got sort of dragged back in, and I did end up, yes, I got a horn again. I'd sold my original horn. I started playing in some local orchestras, which, again, having not touched the thing for about 15, almost 20 years, actually, that was quite tough to begin with. But I got back in practice, and I started playing again. And then because I needed a career change, really, I retrained as a music therapist, and the horn was actually my first instrument in that, which was an unusual thing because music, I never met another horn-playing music therapist, but I also had to play the piano, and I started to have piano lessons again and really, really got into that. So the horn, yes, I played for quite a while. Then I stopped, and then I started again. I stopped and started again. But anyway, I have actually now stopped, only as of a couple of years ago, but I now teach and play the piano quite seriously, which is another risky thing, and something else takes a lot of time. So I did eventually make the decision, the horn has had its day. But I think writing solo was almost like, it's like a sort of love song to the horn. I mean, it has played a major part in my life, and it was almost like a sort of, goodbye, really.
Nice. Tell us about your work as a music therapist. How does that work?
Yes, I'm actually practicing just before lockdown. And as I say, I now actually teach the piano to adults, which has been brilliant and does have a certain amount of therapeutic side to it. But I worked for 6 years as a music therapist with, I work with all sorts, but the 2 groups that I work with mostly were adopted children and families, and also adults with acquired brain injuries. And I know some people, other things as well. Basically, music therapy is using improvised music as a means of communicating with people who may be struggling with words. So, yes, it could be, a child who's been traumatized, an adult with a brain injury, but also it's very useful, people with dementia, children with on the autistic spectrum. So, yeah, and I played both the horn and the piano, and you also play a variety of, simple percussion instruments too, or rather the client normally plays those. But actually the horn worked really well because, with children, they love the sight of it. They love the bell. I mean, you probably need an image of a horn on your website at this point, but it has a big golden flared bell, and children found that fascinating. And of course, they wanted to play it. And it, as I've said, it's actually much more difficult than it looks to play. So that didn't work very well. But it's just a beautiful instrument, basically. And it worked really well.
So you always had a good response with it?
Yes, I would have at first a curious response, because a lot of people had never really seen or heard anything quite like it. But yeah, it was, as I say, I trained for 2 years as a music therapist, and I was the only horn player on the course. But then when I started work, and I went to, you sort of network and you get to know other people, and I never came across another horn-playing music therapist, and there are quite a lot of music therapists in the UK now, but there probably is somebody out there, I don't know, but I never found anyone. And yeah, I think, it's got a great future as a music therapy instrument, actually.
Yeah, interesting. So tell us about your character of Kate and what she goes through in the book.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, Kate's not the easiest. So when we first meet Kate, we actually, in the end, I didn't write this scene first. I actually found it quite difficult to write, but eventually I wrote the scene, which is now opens the book, which is where it all goes wrong on stage. So when we meet her, she is at the top of her game. She's the first horn player with a top orchestra. Obviously, it's a fictional orchestra, but she has worked so hard to get there, and she's in her early 30s when we meet her. So she has been one of the most successful horn players ever. She's driven. She's absolutely driven. And she's also, so the point about her why this all goes wrong, originally I was just going to have her having a sort of run-of-the-mill disaster, but at that level, this actually wasn't quite plausible. In fact, she's also having a miscarriage. But this is a really big concert for her, and it's a really famous horn solo. And she is damned if she's not going to be there and play it. And she's having a bit of a row with the conductor. She is determined that, whatever's going, she's just having pains, and, it's all sort of starting to go wrong with the pregnancy. But she is going to play that solo if it kills her, which it might have done. So she's very driven, and she is prioritizing her music over her relationship with her poor husband, who is absolutely fed up with her, and over her pregnancy, really. When it all goes wrong, she is absolutely, obviously, traumatized, humiliated, doesn't feel that she can... she could have put herself out there again. She probably could have got her career back, but she's so humiliated at the thought of not being the best. She's always been the best, that she can't face that. So she runs away completely. She retrains. She reinvents herself online. She gets divorced, not surprisingly. She starts using her maiden name again, and she reinvents herself. She trains to be a language teacher, TEFL, and goes first to China and then to the Middle East, and then in fact end up in Italy. She doesn't tell. So in this new incarnation, she's very, very insecure. She's sort of trying to be one of the gang, and a lot of her fellow teachers are much younger than her. She's worried about her age. She's worried about her looks. She wants to be liked. She becomes a sort of artificial person. She posts all this stuff on social media about, what a fun time she's having. And she tries to convince herself and everybody else, it's all great, but it really isn't. And then, so that's like the second incarnation of Kate. The third incarnation is, so her mother dies 10 years down the line, and she goes back to her hometown in the British Midlands to clear out the house, all that. And I won't take this much further, or it starts to be a spoiler, but she meets this young teenager. And she also meets quite a few other people who remembered Kate when she was, growing up in the town, and was in the youth orchestra, and was, absolutely obsessed about her music, and was sparky. And all right, as I say, she wasn't the easiest, but she was genuine. She was real. When she starts to remember all that, and people start to remind her of it and say, "Oh, you can't say you've given up the horn," So she starts to be dragged back into this world, and then she meets the young horn player. And that from then on, it's a sort of battle between her genuine self. She's never going to be a top professional anymore, but her genuine self this artificial persona that she's created. So I better not go on because it will be a spoiler. But so that's Kate. She's quite a complicated character and not altogether likable all the time either.
Sounds like there's a lot going on, and it obviously covers quite a big period of time as well.
Yeah, so it's 10 years from when she runs away after the disaster, and 10 years which is told nearly all in backstory, and then the focus is when she comes back to the hometown and starts to try and sort herself out.
And did you enjoy writing it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the time, absolutely, because the story was very, very dear to my heart. It went through, as all novels do, quite a lot of drafts and incarnations, and it was originally in the third person. It's now in the first person. And actually, having said, I mean, yes, sometimes you think, I can't bear to do another draft. Please, no. But actually, I think this goes back to my own career as a radio feature maker a long time ago. And I actually am happier when I've got something to craft, even if it's rubbish. It's I mean, hopefully it's not rubbish eventually, but the first draft is nearly always rubbish. And I actually think my first drafts are particular rubbish because I have this mentality of I want to get something down on the page, then I will start to form it, sculpt it into what it's meant to be. So yes, no, I do. I love writing. I mean, it has its frustrations, but yeah, I do. Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Just get it all written down and then go back and edit it.
Start to make sense of it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if people want to get a copy of Solo, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Caroline Swinburne, who we've been chatting with. Caroline, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks. It's been lovely to talk.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Peter Hain. He's a politician who, as a teenager, was exiled to the UK from South Africa, becoming a leading activist in the anti-apartheid movement. Elected MP for Neath in 1991, he stood down in 2015 to join the House of Lords. He's written 3 environmental thrillers, The Rhino Conspiracy, The Elephant Conspiracy and The Lion Conspiracy. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his first standalone thriller set in the 1980s. It's called Fallout. In the book, he weaves historical facts amongst the fiction, including his own experience of an undetonated letter bomb arriving at his family home in the 1970s. Welcome to the Book Show, Peter.
Thank you, Hannah. Delighted to be with you.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. So what got you into thriller writing then?
Well, I have always liked thrillers, and because my job in politics has involved me in reading a lot of stodgy stuff, when I have any spare time, I read thrillers. And I thought, well, let me try my own hand at them, see whether I can write one. I'd written a lot of books, non-fiction books, books about current affairs and politics and so on. But I hadn't tried my hand at thrillers, and they're a very different challenge. And this one is an example.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how have you found it? Are you obviously enjoying it because you've kept going with writing thrillers?
Yes, and I'm finishing at the moment after a pretty trenchant editing recommendations, trying to accommodate them all. It's about tobacco smuggling, and as well as gold smuggling, but primarily about cigarette smuggling. It's a huge empire. And when I got into this thriller writing, I did a lot of research, for example, on the environmental wildlife thrillers, the Rhino Conspiracy, the Elephant Conspiracy, and the Lion Conspiracy, about how the lives of rhinos and elephants and lions actually interweave with the corruption. This one is different because it's set some time ago in the Cold War era and about a clash between the apartheid state in South Africa, as it then was, with Nelson Mandela in prison, and the newly independent Zimbabwe, with an old faction of the Chinese elite that used to be ruling elite, that used to be allied to Mao Zedong before his death, and then the change to a more capitalistic market-based economic system, how that faction is seeking to collaborate with the South African state and its agents over the provision of nuclear capability. So it's got nuclear weapons dimension, as well as the politics surrounding that very fraught area under the Cold War.
Yeah. And the book goes into 4 different cities, 4 different countries, all of which you know a lot about.
Yes, I know. You got to know about China and Beijing in particular, that was called Peking then, when I went on a delegation unexpectedly in September 1980, so a long time ago. And it was a fascinating visit because China was then on the cusp of emerging from its old communist state-dominated system where personal freedom was very restricted, but it was an enchanting place to visit. I mean, the capital, then Peking, now Beijing, was full of bicycles. And I remember seeing that, and I capture this in the start of the thriller, where a British scientist, one of my characters, visits and goes through some of the experiences I did, but then stumbles upon this nuclear conspiracy in a way. And he's very innocent. He's a bookish type of scientist. And it's only when he teams up with a young woman political activist who's much more savvy than him about the real world that he starts to realize what's going on, and he's drawn into this whole thing. But it was based on that visit, in which I found a very enchanting place to visit. And when I went back as Secretary of State for Wales on a trade mission in, 2004, it was a very different place, polluted, traffic-choked, gridlocked by cars, as opposed to that enchanting place that I'd visited in 1980, 25 years before, a quarter of a century before, which was emerging from a very old type of China to a very new, modern, cosmopolitan, market-driven China.
Yeah. And even though you know these places really well and have visited, did you still have to do a bit of research as to what life was like in the 80s in these cities?
Yes, I did. And it swings between Beijing and Pretoria and London and Harare being the capital of Zimbabwe. And I know a lot about all of them. But in the case of Zimbabwe, I had to do quite a lot of research just to find out from, in this case, friends about the name of the streets and how they were configured and so on, to understand how that might have worked out. So the plot centers in the end in the borderland area, the Lowveld area between southern Zimbabwe and northern South Africa. And that's when it all comes to a climax, and the principal characters clash with each other, and some are killed, and the plot unfolds.
And the first 3 books we mentioned briefly, the 3 environmental thrillers, all have the word conspiracy in the title. And there's a bit of a conspiracy in this one as well.
There is, because it's as I mentioned, this rather bookish scientist who's rather unworldly, just buried in his physics and his civilian nuclear research. He's the one who uncovers this in a kind of stumbling way. And yes, it involved quite a lot of research. But it also, one of the things I found about thrillers is, whereas if you set out to write a book about the current affairs, about politics, in my case, South Africa, I've got a new book coming out about why liberation movements fail in government, why they become corrupt. But one of the differences about writing a thriller is, whereas for the other type of books you set out a plan and it more or less goes to plan, though the chapters change and the content is tweaked as you go along and do the necessary writing and research, thrillers take a life of their own, and their characters have to they sometimes end up doing things that you haven't particularly planned, because not that you are out of control as the writer, but I think that's one of the most intriguing things, is that if you're entering the world of fiction, But in my case, it's closely allied to real events and real issues of almost a faction kind, a factual kind. And those fictional characters, these entirely non-existing people in the real world, but modeled on what people would have done or did do, because I know about those or researched them. They take a life of their own, and you've got to adapt to that and go with the flow. So that's what's very interesting writing about it. I'd say writing fiction, writing thrillers in this case, but they could be all sorts of fiction, is much more challenging in lots of ways.
Yeah, and also merging the two worlds together when you're putting fictional characters and fictional things that didn't happen in with things that really did happen, merging the two worlds together.
Indeed. So at the time, Nelson Mandela was in prison in the 1980s. China was on the cusp of emerging from its old past into a much more market economy-based future, which it is now the dominant superpower, quickly emerging economic superpower of the world. I think it'll become the superpower, eclipsing the United States in due course. So that transition, and I was there just as it was starting to happen, but hadn't quite begun to do so. And then I know about, having been involved in the anti-apartheid struggle myself, having lived in South Africa. My parents worked with Nelson Mandela and his colleagues and ended up being put in jail and being banned and forced into exile. So I know about apartheid of that era, and it still involved a bit of research. Zimbabwe I know a bit about as well. And of course, London in the 1980s was a very different place from what it is now. And our intelligence services were quite closely allied to the apartheid state's intelligence services. And that's part of the plot as well.
Yeah, interesting. And why is it called Fallout?
Well, because the potential of a nuclear weapons deployment and the fallout, the mushroom cloud, which is on the cover, hovering over a picture and a scene set on the Chinese Great Wall, the only visible man-made building construction visible from space. That is part of it, the nuclear side, and then all that leads up to that, and the machinations and the tensions and the way this plot unfolds is set against that background.
Yeah. And I have to ask you about your experience of this letter bomb arriving at your family home. That must have been terrifying.
It happened almost too quickly to get terrified, though in retrospect it was. It was in June 1972, and a Saturday morning, and my sister was opening this pile of campaign mail, and she was young. I was having breakfast with her, and I was still living at home with my mother and father in southwest London, when suddenly this contraption was pulled out of a large envelope amidst a pile of envelopes and campaign material and letters and so forth that used to arrive with me regularly as I lived at home. That was my known address. And suddenly this contraption of terminals and wires was sitting on our breakfast table. It was quite obviously a bomb of the kind that was assassinating anti-apartheid leaders right across the world. Fortunately, there was a fault in the trigger mechanism, and it didn't blow up. And the Scotland Yard bomb squad descended on the house and took it away and made it safe, and told us that it would have not only blown me up, blown my family up, but blown the entire house up.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was a pretty scary thing to go through, but it was over so quickly that you, in a sense, got more scared afterwards thinking about it than you did at the time.
Yeah.
As I say, other anti-apartheid leaders were killed by similar letter bombs.
Gosh. And it didn't put you off? It didn't make you want to stop the campaigning and things?
No, because I took the view, look, I always thought if the apartheid state wanted to kill me, they could have done.
Yeah.
Because they did that to anti-apartheid leaders right across the world. I didn't have a personal protection. I didn't have any weapons on me. I didn't have any of those kind of defensive responses. I mean, when I became a cabinet minister for Northern Ireland, I was then escorted everywhere, literally everywhere, even to buy a newspaper or to visit my grandchildren by armed protection officers. But in those days, in the 1970s, this was 1972, I had no protection around me. I'd go on my own on the train, the tube in London, buses, traveling all over the country on my own. So, I knew that if somebody really wanted to bump me off, in this case because they were angry about the campaigns I led to stop all white racist selected South African sports tours, believing that rugby and cricket and other teams, including the Olympics team, should be selected on merit, not confined to only those who had a white skin. And we did manage to stop those tours. And that's why I was regarded as public enemy number one. So I was in their crosshairs. But as I say, it didn't deter me because I thought this was trying to intimidate me and kill me. But I wasn't going to be intimidated. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking to you now or writing that thriller.
No, absolutely. So I'm assuming you're very proud of the work you did back then.
Well, yes, but I was one of thousands of people. But having said that, we were in a minority. People take it for granted now that apartheid was defeated. People take it for granted that Nelson Mandela walked to freedom from prison after 27 years of the best years of his life inside. And subsequently became president of the country in its first ever democratic election. People take those things for granted. And yet we were in a minority, the anti-apartheid movement. I think it's really important to make this point. We're always in a minority. Like the suffragettes were in a minority, struggling and campaigning and fighting for votes for women. Now they're treated as heroines. At the time, over 100 years ago, they were vilified, as we were, as I was. And so that letter bomb threat was actually part of that.
Well, it's been great to chat with you, Peter Hain. Thank you so much for joining us. And if listeners want to get a copy of Fallout, it's available now on our website, TRE.radio. Peter Hain, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
The TRE Bookshow is sponsored by audible.co.uk. Download one title each month, plus unlimited listening to thousands of Audible originals, podcasts and audiobooks. Just click on the Audible banner at www.tre.radio.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.